It's the epic showdown we've been waiting for. What is happening? Go on, Pfeffer. Look at that tail. That tail is very mischievous. Yeah, she's... Oh, well, it appears you've won, Stella. Have a nice day. But get ready, because that's about as chill as the subject matter for this video is going to be today. Ah! Every damn time. I actually enjoy that, and it's a lot easier when there isn't a vehicle in the driveway. I could just sprint out of there like a beast. I look like crap today. I've got kind of that... He turned out to be a serial killer, but no one believed it till they saw it. Fresh out of bed. This is what my first day off in like 5 days looks like. Just kind of, finally, I'm off work, but I don't know if I can enjoy the day. Anyway, I'm going to an Arco. So I'm literally going to do like a half-hour trip one way because I want a mojito rock star. I haven't had one since my Pier Park video, and so I'm jonesing for one. And it's a double, I was gonna say double-edged sword, but that doesn't make any sense. It's killing two birds with one stone is what I'm going for, because only a couple of blocks from said Arco station, which is the only place I've been able to find them at Cesar Chavez and Belmont, there's a little piece of interesting and yet disturbing Portland history that happened kind of just around the corner a little bit. And I had a, well, not so fun time trying to find this location, but I feel like it's gonna be really cool to finally see this spot. Steve the Amateur Historian. And that brings me here to Colonel Summers Park. I don't know who Colonel Summers was, but that's why they call me an amateur historian. And this is, well, this is kind of the beginning of how I solved my little quandary. And you're gonna get the full story whether you want to hear it or not. I had a hell of a time figuring out where this place was that I was trying to get to. And J.D. Chandler, he's a local historian. It's because of people like him that I call myself an amateur historian, because this guy's like one of the it people. He's written like at least 6 books on Portland history and the stuff I'm really into, like crime and corruption and whatnot. And they have a nice little garden here at the Colonel Summers Park. But while I was interviewing him for a film I did that's on my YouTube channel called The Woman in the Water, it's a full-length documentary, go watch it. I was interviewing him talking about crime back in the day, and he brought up a case called the Pandora's Box killing. I almost want to say murder, but I don't really know. It didn't quite go that direction. But anyway, that was where I first heard about this case, and I've wanted to figure out where this Pandora's Box killing happened. I went back and read an article that JD wrote, Couldn't find the exact address. I read an article about houses where murder happened. I think it was written for like the Portland Mercury. Couldn't get an exact address. All I knew was that it was on Yamhill Street. But aside from that, I had no picture. I had no address. I had nothing to go on. And I really wanted to go to the site, and I couldn't do it because I didn't know where the house was. Well, JD posted a video where they're doing like a tour of these places where, you know, it's dark Portland history. He's got a little video on his channel about it. And I noticed as I'm watching the video, there's a moment where they say, oh, here's Colonel Summers Park. And then right from that point, they go into the Pandora's box killing. So I'm like, Colonel Summers Park. So it's got to be near there. And of course, this is, this little road right here is Yamhill. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's close, because I know it's on Yamhill, but is it Yamhill and 20th? Is it Yamhill and 50th? I still don't know. And so I'm watching the video, and they finally show what the house looks like. So I go on Google Maps, and I pause the video on a frontal view of the house, pause it, and I'm literally going down the street, down Yamhill. And for the life of me, I could not find a house that matched this house. So I'm back at square one, and I go back and look at the video, and I notice right as they're pulling up to the house, there's a house right next to it. It's very thin. There's like, there's almost like a little balcony here, and a window in the middle. It's a really thin house with a stairway going up and one of those garages that goes under the house. So I'm like, okay, if I can find a house that looks like that, maybe I can channel my efforts into, like, you know, I have two specific looking houses, so I'm hoping it hasn't been demoed recently or something. But I start going down Google Maps again looking for this thin house, and I find a house that's almost identical. And then I noticed the house right next to this house that I found on Google Maps, it looks exactly like the one that I see in JD's video next to the Pandora's box house, is blurred out. It's blurred out on Google imagery, so apparently even Google doesn't even want you to know this dark history. So even though I literally could not see for certain, I know that that's the house. So anyway, I'm going there now. I'm only like a block or two away. And I did notice, for any of you people that want to go see this place for yourself, I noticed when I was reading this article about all these, or I think it was even like a news channel report, and they said that the guy that lives in the house now didn't want to be interviewed, so he either isn't really interested, doesn't care about that aspect of history, doesn't really like that aspect of history, or he just doesn't want to be hassled about it. Either way, if you're going to go come see this house for yourself, just know that. So don't linger around, just look up and be like, oh crap, there it is, and be on your way. Even I'm going to kind of pass by it pretty quickly as I tell you the story of what happened here back in 1946. This is Yamhill and 21st. I know I'm close. Alright, so this house in the middle is the thin house I noticed. You'll see it's got the walkway, it's got the entryways on each side, the window in the middle, the garage underneath. That means this next house over here, this one, and yep, it looks the same. This is where the Pandora's box killing happened. Alright, so again, I don't want to linger around too long. It appears the windows look like shutters look like they're closed, so I'm not too worried about them seeing me and be like, what are you doing here? I hate being intrusive when it comes to like videoing private residences. But anyway, this house behind me, this is the Pandora's box killing house here on Yamhill, between 21st and 22nd Avenues. And essentially, 1946, this guy named James Bowden lives here in this house with his wife. From what I understand, he had recently come back from a stint in, I think he served in World War II. So, you who knows what he was like when he came back, but essentially, after he came back, his family noticed he was kind of very bizarre about people going into the basement. He said, don't go in the basement, it's dangerous down there, which is kind of like, what? Like, what's in the basement of this house right here? And, oh my god, and then there's a doorway into the basement. I'm assuming that's the basement. So, that's the odd thing about James Bowden. Now, from what I've read, James Bowden got this idea, I don't know if there was any validity to it, that his wife was fooling around on him. And he decides, keeping it secret from his whole family, he had a wife and children, who I think were not like little kid age anymore, but still children. And I don't know how he thought this plan would work. I don't know, he may have not completely been there. He had fashioned for himself an explosive of some kind that he kept inside this little locker. And he kept that in the basement. So we can all look back in hindsight and say that's why he didn't want people going into the basement, because he thought, I mean, I'm assuming he didn't want to blow his family up. The running belief is that he was going to use that somehow to take out his wife's lover. That was apparently the plan that this guy had. He goes away, this is 1946, he goes away for a couple of days. He tells his wife again before he leaves, don't go in the basement, just don't go in the basement. And then he says he's leaving on a little, I think it was like a fishing trip to Newport for a couple of days. And his wife apparently has had enough. She is going to go downstairs and snoop around a little bit, look around, see what goes on. She goes down, she's maybe even seen the locker before and wondered, like, what's that for? What's in there? In this neighborhood, she opens the locker. Boom! The explosive detonates, kills her immediately. This explosive, rocketing sound just reverberates all through this neighborhood. So immediately people know something's going on. And what happened is, again, presumably not by intent, James Bowden, his actions led to his wife literally blowing up. And it's become known as the Pandora's box murders. I guess the idea that that locker was his little Pandora's box. You don't want to open Pandora's box because then bad things happen. And that's essentially what happened to his wife back in 1946. Just a crazy sad story, but like I said, this video was not going to be pleasant subject matter today. And I'm just glad that I finally figured out where that friggin' house is. Thanks, JD. You led me on a little bit of a chase, a little bit of a wild goose chase, but you gave me just enough information to figure it out. Your work went a long way to keep me from having to do a very generic, hi, Steve the Amateur Historian, I'm walking down Yamhill Street, and kinda somewhere around here there was a house that some guy blew his wife up in the basement in, and I don't know where it is, but that might be it, you know? And to then somewhat wrap things up on the story behind this, because obviously there were going to be repercussions to whether it was intentional or unintentional blowing up another human being in the basement of your home. So, of course, immediately James Bowden was investigated in terms of what happened, and that's where it came out that, you know, he had planned to build this explosive device to take out this guy that he was pretty sure his wife, who I believe he was actually in the process of divorcing, or she was divorcing him, and he probably assumed this guy was taking her away, so to speak, and he wanted his revenge. That's kind of the story that has manifested over the years. But, you know, his daughters were interviewed, and they remembered going down to the basement and seeing him placing something very delicately into this locker. That, 99% odds that was the explosive device. James Bowden did his best to kind of explain his way through it, calling it an accident, and it probably was. I don't think he had the intent of blowing his wife up, especially if he's telling them not to go down there. But he claimed that that was his intent, but he changed his mind and he stored it away until he could properly kind of deconstruct it. And then this horrible tragedy happened. So that was about the best defense he could offer up. And because it was such a big case and it was such a massive tragedy, this wasn't somebody getting shot in the back in an alley somewhere where no one saw it. This was a whole neighborhood shaken up by a massive explosion that one human being who didn't ask for this was right there at the epicenter of where it happened. It was such a big story that it was unlikely that James Bowden was going to walk away with a slap on the wrist. And he ended up being found guilty of first-degree murder, actually, which is kind of surprising, considering the fact that whatever the intent, I don't think you can argue beyond a shadow of a doubt in that case that that was intended murder on his part. And that's why I don't really call it a murder, because I don't think he had the intent of blowing his wife up. If he pulled a pin out of a grenade and threw it at his wife and said, "Catch, honey," she catches it and blows up, that's pretty clear-cut murder. But anyway, that's what James Bowden went down for, was being found guilty of first-degree murder, and you don't walk away from something like that.